Hello and welcome to the 7 o'clock news. It's the 23rd of August, I'm Richard Smith, and this is today's top story. As many of our viewers know, the Nazis from Germany have been moving through the Soviet Union in the last several months, and now they have seemed to split their attack heading towards Moscow and southwest of the Soviet Union. If the Nazis gain control of the southwest of the Soviet Union, they gain control of the vast amounts of oil in the Caucasus. Today it appears that the Nazis have decided to attack the city of Stalingrad on the Volga River in this region. Now we'll go to our reporter in the field, Harold White, who is in Stalingrad. For more, over to you, Harold.
Thank you, Richard. Well, this will be a monumental battle in the impact of the war. As you said, Richard, if the Nazis win this battle, they may not be able to only take the USSR, but the added resources could be devastating for the Soviet Union and Great Britain. Today, the Germans began bombing the city, using the Luftwaffe to brutally attack not only the Soviet military, but also civilians. Already, Soviet casualties are very high. Although the Germans are superior in supply and tactics, the Soviets know what they are fighting for: Stalin City. To the Soviets, losing Stalingrad would not only be a huge tactical loss, but a huge moral loss as well. I am joined now by a Soviet soldier who is stationed here in Stalingrad, Dmitry Belikov. Dmitry, how important is it for you to hold off the Germans here in Stalingrad?
Stalingrad is key. It is a tactical stronghold for the Soviet Union, but it's also our leader's city. No Soviet anywhere wants to lose this city. It is a piece of us, and we'll give it renewed vigor in battle, knowing that we are fighting for Stalingrad.
If Stalingrad is lost, how will it affect the Soviet Union, and how will it affect its people?
If we lose Stalingrad, firstly we'll lose a stronghold, but secondly we'll lose a part of our soul. For us, Stalingrad is more than a city. It is our leader's great city. The amount of morale lost if we lose this city will be great. It will be crippling loss to the Soviet military. We also know that the oil fields in Baku are behind us. If we lost Stalingrad, much of southwest of the Soviet Union will fall, and the oil from Baku will supply Hitler with more resources to help improve and increase his Nazi war machine.
How is the morale of the soldiers? What is the situation of your supplies? And how do you think you will hold up against the Nazis?
Well, we could not keep the Nazis out of Stalingrad. The outskirts were very important. The Germans have been able to take many of our lands that produce the food Stalingrad needs to survive. Without it, we may starve. They have also cut us off from the capital, Moscow, which will restrict us from obtaining any more reinforcements and supplies.
Thank you, Dmitry. Alright, Richard. As you can see, the odds for Soviet success is very low, but they know what they are fighting for: Stalin City. Back to you.
Alright, Harold, thanks for the report. That was tonight's 7 o'clock news. From all of us here at the BBC, we would like to say good night. Good morning. Today is the 23rd of November, it's 8 o'clock, and I'm Richard Smith, bringing you the news. Since the beginning of the Battle of Stalingrad, the German forces have had the city enveloped with the Soviets locked inside. The Nazis used their signature pincer movements to surround the city and continue to apply pressure to the Soviets. However, earlier this week in Stalingrad, the Soviet forces pushed onto the offensive as they executed a plan called Operation Uranus, in which they attacked the weaker Italian, Romanian and Hungarian forces that had been protecting the flank of the German Sixth Army, and then copied the pincer movement that the Germans used. The next day they travelled south and attacked the southern flank of German Sixth. Yesterday, Soviet forces met up in the town of Kalach, hence completing the pincer movement and also surrounding the Nazi forces.
Yes, Richard, we are in no doubt that the Germans were exhausted from the pounding the Soviets with their military might gave them. We also know that the winter is now upon them. But we must congratulate our Soviet allies, led by Georgiy Zhukov and Alexander Vasily. They have turned the tide of the Battle of Stalingrad, and now we can look ahead and hope this is also going to turn the tide in the war. I'm Harold White.
And I'm Richard Smith, and this has been your morning news. Good day. Hello and welcome to the evening news at 7 o'clock. It is the 2nd of February and I'm Richard Smith. Today we return to Stalingrad, where the monumental battle has ended. The Soviets, against all odds, are the victors. Today the Nazi forces commanded by Friedrich Paulus surrendered to the might of the Soviet military. This battle has lasted many months. The Germans appeared they had the city under control and surrounded the Soviet forces. The strategic planning of General Zhukov and the determination of General Chikuikov forced the Germans to retreat. This battle may be a turning point of the war. For more, we are joined by a reporter Harold White, who was in Stalingrad during the course of the battle. Harold, can you tell me how the Soviets were able to defy all odds and first force the Germans out of Stalingrad?
Well, Richard, strategy was very important, and Operation Uranus was a very strategically solid plan. But in the end, it was the sheer determination by the Soviets that caused them to be successful. The Germans had the city completely surrounded, and without the will to defend the city, the Soviets would never have been able to break free. Before the battle started, General Chuikov stated, "We will defend the city or die." And that is really how the Soviets fought. Of course, in the end, the Soviet winter affected the unprepared German forces, and the Soviets were able to easily push back the Nazi forces.
You mentioned the harsh winter. How important do you think it was for this battle? How do you think that will affect the rest of the war in the Soviet Union?
Well, it really was the key piece to victory. And had this been in the summer, and the Germans had been able to receive the much needed supplies, they may have been able to counterattack and take the city back. But this was not the case. The winter really has just started, and we're already seeing how it is affecting the German forces. I believe the Germans are worn out, and this may cost them a lot of momentum. I'm once again joined here by Dmitry and some of his fellow soldiers. Dmitry, what does the Soviet victory mean for you and the USSR?
It means victory for the Soviet Union. It means saving our city Stalingrad. And it means the fall of Germany. From now on, we'll continue to push through Europe and into Germany, where we'll finally defeat the Germans and take revenge for our lost brothers.
Thank you, Dmitry.
Thank you, Harold.
Richard, it is a day of triumph for the Soviets today. I believe, just as many as the Soviets do, that this is the start of the end of the war. Back to you, Richard.
Thanks for that, Harold. Now with the Germans out of Stalingrad and on their retreat, who knows? Maybe the tide of war has changed, and we can begin to push the Nazis from all fronts. This battle that our friends, the Soviets, have won could be the turning point in this war. Thank you for tuning in tonight for our broadcast. I'm Richard Smith, and that's the news. Good night.